All clear. Later, Don made a phone call to a colleague, and while waiting for Stormy's return, he checked on the girls. He found them reading quietly in Misty's bedroom. Maggie was cuddled up with the kitten while the other girls were engrossed in books. Don smiled at their peaceful moment and left them to enjoy their time. When Stormy returned, she greeted Don warmly with a quick kiss and went to check on the girls. After some time, they sat down together, Stormy finally breaking the silence. "Well, the adoption papers are done, and I should have the official approval by the weekend," Stormy said, letting out a sigh of relief. "I've also enrolled Robin, Becky, and at the school. Tomorrow, we're taking them to meet their new teachers." "You care so much for them." "That's a good thing," Dawn reassured her. "They'll do fine once they get used to the school. The teachers will help them catch up." "I just hope they fit in," Stormy replied, her concerns still evident. "Their records aren't exactly in great shape. Time will tell." "We'll see what the teachers say once they've had a chance to assess them," Dawn said, trying to ease her mind. That night, Dawn stayed for dinner, which the girls had been looking forward to. They had all fussed over the kitten after school, but Stormy gently reminded them homework first. As Dawn assisted Stormy in the kitchen, they laughed together, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. Later, Stormy asked Dawn if he could stay the night to look after Maggie while she took the new girls to school. Dawn happily agreed, promising to take care of everything. That night, the girls had trouble sleeping, excited about starting school the next day. Maggie, however, slept soundly, dreaming of kittens and feeling safe in her new home. First day back at school, trouble from a new source. Robin was up early, along with and Becky. Stormy had them get dressed and come downstairs for breakfast. After the usual morning rush, Stormy handed each of the new schoolgoers a packed lunch, knowing the school meals weren't as nutritious as her home-cooked food. She also handed them backpacks filled with the basic school supplies they'd need. Don was there too, trying to prepare breakfast for himself. Maggie was still asleep as Stormy gathered the three girls for their school debut. Dawn gave Stormy a hug before she left. Stormy drove carefully, showing the girls the route to school in case something unexpected happened and they needed to walk home. She gave them each some extra money for a treat at the shop across from the school and mentioned that Misty would be there to make sure they got on the right bus after class. Upon arriving at school, Stormy took them to meet the principal. After a warm hug, she left, reminding them to just do their best. The principal led them to their teacher, Mr. Jeff Spellman. The girls couldn't help but giggle a little when they learned he'd be their homeroom teacher, as well as their English teacher. Mr. Spellman introduced them to the class and asked Robin and her sisters to stand up and introduce themselves. They did, feeling a little nervous but mostly excited to be starting their new lives at school. Robin noticed that the girl sitting next to her had gorgeous reddish blonde hair and a graceful figure. She whispered, introducing herself as Jenna, and Robin returned the favor. At first break, Jenna, who had been friendly with another student named Michelle, introduced her to Robin and her sisters. Michelle had volunteered to ring the bell between periods since the electric bell system was down, and the students had adopted her new nickname, La Belle Michelle. The day went by in a blur of lessons and new faces. Robin and her sisters tried to stay low-key, simply observing and participating when they felt comfortable. They had no trouble fitting in, especially with Jenna and Michelle guiding them around. At lunchtime, Misty checked in on them to make sure everything was okay. As the day passed, news spread that the girls were adopted by the Knight family. Some students were kind and welcoming, but one girl in particular, Vivian, took an instant dislike to Robin. Robin didn't understand why Vivian targeted her, especially since they'd never met before. Vivian, whose family was involved in some serious legal issues due to the matron, had overheard Robin's name mentioned during tense family conversations. Connecting the dots, Vivian wrongly blamed Robin for her family's problems. As a result, she began bullying Robin, both verbally and physically. Robin and her friends didn't understand why she was being treated this way. Becky and were left alone, but Robin's experiences with Vivian were escalating. Robin tried to avoid her as much as possible, but even with her friends around, there were times she couldn't escape. The following week, things didn't improve. Life at the Knight household was wonderful. Good food, love, and support, but Robin continued to face harassment from Vivian. One day, while in art class, Robin was splashed with green paint from a water-based paint pot thrown over the stall door while she was using the toilet. It was a humiliating experience, and when she returned to class, drenched in paint, her teacher didn't fully believe her. Robin tried to explain, but the teacher's words, "It takes two to tango," made her feel like she was being blamed for what happened. Vivian seemed to enjoy the attention, and Robin suspected she was the one behind it all. Robin was sent to the bathroom to clean up and stayed with her to help. Robin wanted to leave and cry, but reminded her to stick it out until the end of the day. Robin took a quick shower, and though she felt terrible about the situation, she knew she had to power through the rest of the school day. At least she knew she could always call Stormy when she got home, and she knew she'd get the support she needed. First day back at school, trouble from a new source. Robin woke up early, along with Anne and Becky. Stormy told them to get dressed and join her downstairs for breakfast. After the usual morning rush, Stormy handed each of them a packed lunch, knowing the school meals weren't as healthy as her home-cooked food. She also gave them backpacks filled with school supplies. Don was there, trying to get breakfast for himself. Maggie was still asleep as Stormy prepared the girls for their school debut. Don gave Stormy a quick hug before she left. Stormy drove carefully, showing the girls the route to school in case they needed to walk home. She also gave them some extra money for a treat at the shop across from the school and mentioned that Misty would be there to help them get on the right bus after class. At school, Stormy took them to meet the principal. After a warm hug, Stormy reminded the girls to do their best. The principal led them to their teacher, Mr. Jeff Spellman. The girls were introduced to the class and stood up to say their names. Robin noticed a girl named Jenna sitting next to her. Jenna had beautiful reddish blonde hair and seemed friendly. Robin introduced herself, and they hit it off right away. During the first break, Jenna introduced Robin and her sisters to Michelle, a girl who had volunteered to ring the school bell. Michelle was given the nickname La Belle Michelle for her role. The school day passed in a blur of lessons, new faces, and adjusting to the environment. Robin and her sisters felt welcomed by Jenna and Michelle. Lunchtime came, and Misty checked in on them to make sure they were okay. Word quickly spread through the school about the new girls being adopted by the Knight family. Most students were friendly, but one girl, Vivian, seemed to take an instant dislike to Robin. Robin didn't understand why, as she had never met Vivian before. But Vivian's family was involved in some legal issues due to the matron, and she mistakenly blamed Robin for her family's problems. Vivian began bullying Robin, and Robin didn't know how to handle it. The next week, things got worse. Robin was drenched in green paint during art class. A pot of paint was thrown over the bathroom stall door while Robin was inside. When she returned to class, covered in paint, her teacher didn't believe her. Robin suspected Vivian, who seemed to smirk at the situation. Robin was sent to the bathroom to clean up and stayed with her to help. Robin wanted to go home, but encouraged her to stick it out for the rest of the day. Robin's heart ached, but she knew she had to keep going. Running from trouble. Feeling overwhelmed, Robin decided to run away. She heard Becky and calling her name as they tried to catch up, but Robin was determined to escape. She found a quiet corner and, using her chameleon power, changed her appearance. She altered her clothes and skin color to blend in, walking away unnoticed. Becky ran past her, oblivious to the transformation. Robin wandered the streets, unsure of where to go. She stumbled upon a church and felt drawn inside. The calm atmosphere of the church offered her solace. Robin knelt and prayed, unsure of what to do next. Pastor John, noticing Robin, approached her quietly. He knelt beside her and offered comforting words about unconditional love and forgiveness. Robin, feeling safe, listened to his advice. Pastor John asked if she had anyone to contact, but Robin declined. She dried her tears and, without warning, rearranged her clothes. "I'm fine now, thanks to you," Robin said with newfound confidence. She left the church, determined to figure things out. Robin wandered back towards the school, but got lost along the way. As dusk fell, she finally returned to the school gates. A police car pulled up, and an officer asked if she was Robin Knight. Robin nodded, still unsure of what to say. The officer gently asked if she was okay, and Robin nodded again. They drove back to her home in silence. When they arrived, the house was lit up and Stormy was waiting, visibly relieved to see Robin safe. The officer helped Robin out of the car and into the house, where she was greeted by the concerned faces of her family. Robin was unsure of what would happen next, but she was grateful to be home. First day back at school, trouble from a new source. The morning began with a rush as Robin and Becky prepared for their second day at school. Robin felt an unfamiliar mixture of excitement and nervousness stirring in her chest. She could sense the tension in the air. Today was going to be another test. Stormy's comforting presence and the warmth of her new family filled Robin with hope, but deep down, she knew there were still challenges ahead. The house was filled with the sounds of morning chaos, breakfast being hurriedly served, girls scrambling for their things, and Stormy moving through the motions with calm efficiency. Stormy handed each of the girls a packed lunch, knowing well that the school's cafeteria wouldn't measure up to the hearty meals she provided at home. She also handed them backpacks filled with school essentials, each personalized with a little note tucked inside to make them feel loved and supported. Robin and the others smiled at the small touches, realizing just how far they had come. Don, still sleepily rubbing his eyes, moved around the kitchen, trying to get breakfast together for himself while the girls buzzed around him. Maggie, blissfully unaware of the day's events, was still curled up in bed, lost in a world of dreams. Stormy gave Don a quick kiss on the cheek, grabbing the last of the lunches, and before they knew it, the girls were in the car, heading toward their first day back at school. Stormy drove with caution, making sure the girls knew the route in case anything went wrong. She gave them money for a treat at the shop across from the school and reminded them that Misty would be there to guide them to the right bus when school let out. Stormy's words were full of encouragement, but Robin couldn't help but feel the weight of the unknown. Upon arriving at school, Stormy walked the girls to the principal's office, where they were introduced to their new teachers. Robin felt a bit of nervous excitement as she met her English teacher, Mr. Jeff Spellman. His warm greeting and the welcoming smiles of the other students did little to quell her growing unease, but the day proceeded without incident. The girls made new friends, with Jenna and Michelle quickly taking them under their wings and showing them the ropes. The first day passed in a blur, new names, new faces, and new rules. But despite the school's bustling energy, Robin couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was an eerie sensation, like something was brewing just under the surface. During lunch, as the girls ate together and shared stories about their morning, Robin couldn't help but notice a pair of eyes on her. Vivian Brixton, the girl who had been giving Robin trouble, had been glaring at her from across the cafeteria. It didn't take long for Robin to realize that Vivian was after her. Despite their never having met before, Vivian seemed to have decided that Robin was the source of her family's recent problems. And Vivian wasn't one to let things slide. Her passive-aggressive behavior quickly turned into outright harassment, escalating to the point of stealing Robin's things and planting evidence in her bag. Robin had never felt the sting of such venom before. Despite the friendly faces of Jenna and Michelle, and the supportive whispers from Anne and Becky, the weight of the accusations against her was crushing. That afternoon, in the midst of gym class, Robin found herself surrounded by the usual noise and chaos. As the girls played netball, Robin faked an ankle injury, taking the opportunity to sit out and retreat to the changing rooms where she could escape for a moment. Alone, she quietly activated her chameleon power, slipping into the identity of her tormentor, Vivian. In her new disguise, Robin felt strangely empowered. She moved with purpose, walking confidently into the classroom where the old school bell was kept. She took the bell, hiding it in her locker before changing back into her original form. Her heart raced as she rejoined her friends in the gym, unaware that Michelle and Jenna had been working behind the scenes to make sure Vivian would be caught in the act. Vivian, who had been caught red-handed with the stolen CDs, tried to protest her innocence, but the evidence was overwhelming. Her actions were exposed, and the school buzzed with the news of her scheme to frame Robin. Vivian's arrogance faltered as the truth came out, and the teachers quickly made arrangements to speak with her parents. The revelation that Vivian's father was involved with the matron's illicit activities only added fuel to the fire. The next day, as Robin walked through the halls of the school, she felt a strange sense of relief. Vivian's schemes had been thwarted, but the school still felt tense, as if the fallout from the previous day's events lingered in the air. Running from trouble. Robin's day took a sudden turn when the harassment from Vivian escalated. The accusations, the sneers, and the malicious whispering wore on her, and despite her attempts to hold it together, she could feel the weight of everything pushing her down. In the midst of it all, she snapped. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't stay there any longer. Robin ran. She fled the school grounds, hoping to find solace in the streets. Her heart raced, but even as she ran, she knew she couldn't escape the turmoil in her mind. She wandered aimlessly, trying to outrun her own thoughts, until she found herself standing in front of a church. Without thinking, she stepped inside, seeking refuge in the cool, quiet interior. Inside, Robin knelt in one of the pews, her body trembling as she prayed for guidance. It was here that she met Pastor John, who quietly knelt beside her. The pastor's calming presence soothed Robin's anxious mind. He spoke gently of God's unconditional love and forgiveness, reminding her that she was never truly alone. For the first time in days, Robin felt a glimmer of hope. Pastor John asked if he could contact anyone, but Robin, having come to a decision, declined. She knew what she had to do. She dried her tears, composed herself, and left the church, her mind now focused on what lay ahead. As Robin walked back toward the school, she knew her escape hadn't gone unnoticed. The police had been called, and Stormy was frantic with worry. The search for Robin had begun, and her absence sent a ripple of anxiety through the house. Stormy, though worried, held her ground. Robin had to be found, but Stormy knew her daughter was strong. By the time Robin returned to the school gates, it was dark and the streetlights flickered on. She was stopped by a police officer who gently asked if she was Robin Knight. Robin nodded, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what her disappearance had caused. The officer's gentle reassurances did little to ease the knot of guilt twisting in her stomach. The aftermath. Robin's return to her family was a quiet one, though the tension of the situation lingered. Dawn, ever supportive, stood by Stormy as she comforted Robin, assuring her that everything would be okay. The police officer left after confirming Robin's safety, and Stormy, wiping away the last of her tears, embraced her daughter tightly, thanking her for coming home. Stormy then turned her focus to Vivian's actions. She was determined to make sure Robin never faced such harassment again. Her family, however, rallied around her, offering Robin the love and protection she needed. Together, they would face whatever came next, stronger for the love they shared. The girls returned to their regular routines at school, their bond unshaken by the trials they had faced. Robin found strength in her family, knowing she had a safe place to turn to whenever she needed it. The trust between them grew deeper with each passing day, and as the months went by, the sting of Vivian's attacks became a distant memory. And so, Life in the Knight household returned to normal, filled with the warmth of family, love, and the certainty that no matter what happened, they would face it together. Who said virtue is its own reward? A week after Robin's emotional escape and eventual return, Stormy received the best news she had heard in ages. It was a quiet evening as Dawn visited the Knight household for their weekly meal, but the atmosphere felt different, lighter somehow. Stormy had just finished tidying up after dinner when Dawn arrived with a bright smile, his usual cheerful demeanor tinged with something more serious. "The orphanage is finally empty," Dawn said, his voice filled with satisfaction. "All the children have been placed in good homes. Foster care or adoption. No more uncertainty for them." Stormy's eyes filled with tears of relief, a weight she hadn't fully realized she'd been carrying lifting off her shoulders. The children were safe. And, more importantly, the matron who had been the source of so much suffering had been convicted on multiple charges. Along with her, several prominent business figures were facing lesser charges. The matron would be spending the next 15 years in prison, the life she had forced upon the children of the orphanage now irrevocably and justly turned on her. The news felt like a fresh start for everyone involved. Stormy looked at Dawn, her heart swelling with appreciation for everything he had helped her through. As they spoke more about the details, Dawn turned to her with a mischievous glint in his eye. "You know," he said, "it's been a while since we had some time alone. How about a dinner date? Just the two of us?" Stormy's eyes lit up. "I'd love that." That evening, Stormy was the picture of elegance as she prepared for her night out with Dawn. She had dressed in a stunning gown, her hair styled to perfection, but it wasn't just the clothes that made her feel beautiful. It was the love and acceptance she had found in her family and in Dawn. She smiled at her reflection, anticipation buzzing in her veins. The doorbell rang just as Stormy was putting the finishing touches on her look. Dawn knocked sharply, as if rehearsing the moment in his mind. He held a bouquet of red roses in one hand, his other hand offering a smile that was both affectionate and nervous. He kissed her forehead, a soft touch that was more meaningful than any words. "Don't wait up," Stormy called back to the girls as they headed out, her voice tinged with excitement. The evening that followed was one of those rare experiences that felt larger than life. An upscale restaurant with no prices on the menu, just an atmosphere of luxury and indulgence. Stormy had never been one to splurge on fine dining, but tonight she let herself savor the moment. Dawn ordered a bottle of exquisite French champagne, which she drank for the first time, surprised by how much she enjoyed the taste. After a sumptuous meal, as the night unfolded with music and laughter, Dawn reached into his jacket pocket. Stormy's heart skipped a beat as she watched him pull out a small velvet case. Her breath caught in her throat as he knelt in front of her, the weight of the moment settling over them both. "Stormy," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Will you marry me?" Stormy's hands trembled as she accepted the ring, her heart pounding with joy and shock. The diamond was large, a symbol of everything they had built together, but it was more than just the sparkle. It was the symbol of trust, love, and the future they would share. As she slid the ring onto her finger, the applause from nearby tables filled the air, jolting her from the magic of the moment. Dawn stood, bowing with a grin as the applause continued. "Thank you," Dawn said, waving to the crowd, his laughter infectious. The night carried on with more dancing, talking, and dreams of the future. But as they returned home, Stormy smiled quietly to herself, wondering what the next chapter of their lives would bring. Morning after, unexpected turns. The next morning, the reality of their engagement settled into their lives with warmth and excitement. As Stormy lay beside Dawn, the memories of the previous night bubbled up. But as her mind wandered, she couldn't help but smile at the fact that Dawn had fallen asleep so quickly after they returned home. His exhaustion from the champagne and the excitement of the evening had claimed him early. Despite the sweet and affectionate gestures, There were no further romantic moments that night. But Stormy couldn't be upset. She laughed quietly to herself, recalling how she'd entertained herself with some playful thoughts about Dawn's sleeping state. Well, maybe next time, she mused, a light smile crossing her lips as she remembered how she'd examined his sleeping form with a mix of curiosity and amusement. After breakfast, Dawn and Stormy shared the news of their engagement with the girls. Their reaction was overwhelmingly joyful. Hugs and congratulations filled the room, and the discussion quickly turned to wedding plans. Who would be the bridesmaids? Who would be the flower girl? Maggie, with her innocent smile and wide eyes, raised her hand with a confused, "Am I in trouble again?" Laughter filled the room as the girls playfully debated who would do what. Stormy smiled as she realized how much her family had grown, not just in number, but in love and unity. This was what mattered most to her. A family that had gone through trials and come out the other side stronger, with more love to share than ever before. Looking ahead, as Stormy looked at her new family, she knew the future held exciting things. The house felt fuller, but not just with bodies. There was a depth of love, trust, and support that had never been there before. Robin's journey was far from over. The young girl with the unique abilities that had once made her feel so out of place was now surrounded by people who accepted her for who she was, no matter where her abilities might take her. As Stormy lay down that night, her hand resting on the ring Dawn had given her, she closed her eyes with a sense of peace. Her dreams were no longer filled with longing, but with hope. The house was finally a home, and with Dawn by her side, she felt ready to face whatever the future might bring. The end of one chapter marked the beginning of another, one filled with love, challenges, and the promise of a bright future.